So, where we left off with chapter 2 of Poor Things by Alisdair Gray, and this is Femboy Cloud Strike, and I hope that this video brings you some comfort and sleep and relaxation. So, let's get to it. This was the only son of Colin Baxter, the first medical man to be knighted by Queen Victoria. Sir Colin's portrait hung beside the portrait of John Hunter in our examination hall, a clean-shaven, sharp-faced, thin-lipped man who looked nothing like his son. Sir Colin's lack of interest in female beauty was legendary. One of the gossips told me, but his offspring proves he had a peculiar appetite for female ugliness. It was said that Godwin's father got him late in life by a domestic servant, but, unlike my father, gave his son his own surname, a private education, and a small fortune. Nothing definite was known of Godwin's mother. Some said she was in a lunatic asylum, others that Sir Colin kept her as his maidservant in black dress, white cap and apron, silently passing plates round the dining table when he entertained colleagues and the wives of colleagues. The great surgeon died a year before Godwin enrolled as a student. He was a brilliant student apart from hospital work, where his strange appearance and voice frightened patients and offended the staff. So he did not graduate, but continued as a research assistant. Nobody knew or was much interested in his line of research. He was allowed to come and go as he pleased because he paid his fees regularly, inconvenienced nobody, and had a famous father. Most thought him a scientific dabbler, but I also heard that he gave unpaid help to a clinic attached to an East End iron foundry, and treated scorched limbs and fractured spines uncommonly well. In my second year, I attended a public debate on a theme that interested me. Though not by its novelty, does life mainly evolve through small gradual changes or through big catastrophic ones? In those days, that theme was supposed to be religious as well as scientific, so the principal speakers swerved from fanatical solemnity to facetious jocularity, and changed the ground of their argument whenever it gave them the slightest advantage over their opponents. From the floor of the hall, I stated factual grounds on which we could all agree, and on which we could build a structure of new ideas. I chose my words carefully and was heard at first in silence. Then a widespread murmuring began that swelled into bursts of laughter. Next day, an acquaintance told me, "I'm sorry we laughed, McCandless, but to hear you steadily quoting Comte and Huxley and Haeckel in your broad border dialect was like hearing the Queen opening Parliament in the voice of a Cockney costermonger." While speaking, I did not know what so greatly amused folk, and glanced curiously over my own clothing to see if it was unfastened. The laughter grew deafening. However, I finished what I had to say, then walked out through an audience that not only guffawed, but started to clap and stamp. As I reached the door, a piercing sound brought me to a stop and struck silence into everyone else. Godwin Baxter was speaking from the gallery. In a shrill drawl, yet every word was distinct, he demonstrated how each of the platform speakers had used arguments that undermined all they aimed to prove. He ended by saying, "And those on the platform are the chosen few." The response to the last speaker's sensible arguments shows the mental quality of the mass. I said, "Thank you, Baxter," and left. A fortnight later, I was taking a Sunday stroll along the Cathkin Braes when I saw what seemed a 2-year-old child with a tiny puppy approaching from a cambuslang side. As it neared, I recognized Baxter, accompanied by a huge Newfoundland dog. We stopped to exchange a few words, found we enjoyed long tramps, and without discussing the matter, turned sideways and descended to the Rutherglen bank. A day earlier, we had been the only members of the medical faculty to attend a lecture by Clerk Maxwell, and both thought it odd that students who must one day diagnose diseases of the eye cared nothing for the physical nature of light. Godwin said, "Medicine is as much an art as a science, but our science should be as broadly based as possible." Clerk Maxwell and Sir William Thompson are discovering the living quick of what illuminates our brains and thrills along our nerves. The medical faculty overestimate morbid anatomy. But you spend days in the dissecting room. I am refining on some of Sir Colin's techniques. Sir Colin? My famous progenitor. Did you never call him father? I never heard him called anything but Sir Colin. Morbid anatomy is essential to training and research, but leads many doctors into thinking that life is an agitation in something essentially dead. They treat patients' bodies as if the mind, the lives, were of no account. The smooth bedside manner we cultivate is seldom more than a cheap anesthetic to make our patients as passive as the corpses we train upon. But a portrait painter does not learn his art by scraping layers of varnish from a Rembrandt, then slicing off the impasto, dissolving the ground, and finally separating the fibers of the canvas. I agree, said I, that medicine is as much an art as a science. But surely we come to the art in our 4th year when we enter the hospitals. Nonsense, said Baxter abruptly. The public hospitals are places where doctors learn how to get money off the rich by practicing on the poor. That is why poor people dread and hate them, and why those with a good income are operated upon privately or in their own homes. Sir Colin had nothing to do with the hospitals. He operated in our town, house in the winter, our country, house in the summer. I often assisted him. He was a true artist. He boiled his instruments and sterilized his theater when hospital boards were ignoring aseptic medicine or denouncing it as a fraud. No surgeons in the public eye dared admit that their filthy scalpels and blood-caked frock coats had killed scores of patients. A year or so went on using them. And we'll leave it at there for part 2 of reading Poor Things. So, Femboy Cloudstripe signing off. Love you, love.